Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I have taken one of the charts that I used in the last show and put it back on this frame here because there's something I want to show you. And it's interesting about the ranges of the instruments. What instruments can play with certain ranges? Like for example, here is your treble clef. I don't have any key signatures or time signatures on it. I just want to show you this. This is a treble clef. Of course, I have a break in the lines here because it's just a manila envelope I opened up. This is the bass clef, and it goes right here almost to the treble clef. This line, this note with the line through it is the middle C, and it's also considered to be the low C for the woodwind instruments because the low C is as low as many of these instruments go. They don't go any lower than that. When I played this note here, that last note I played, that is a low C. That's what this C sounds like. It's the low C. And you notice that there's one little line through it, and that's called a ledger line. So if I'm going to play up, I'm going from the lowest note and I'm going up. So here's an octave from C to a mid-range C right here, from this C to this high C right here, which has two ledger lines. It has one through it and it has one beneath it. I hope you can see that well. I'm not sure that you can though, because these notes are small, but they're the only ones with stems on them. And then when you get to this one with 5 ledger lines, that's considered to be high C. It's considered to be C above high C because it's an octave above here. And you can see all these ledger lines. Well, what kinds of instruments can play within certain ranges? When you get to recorders, they can play here to here. Recorders have a 2-octave range, so they go from the C to the mid-range C to the high C. They can play that as well. That's all for the recorders. The melodicas, ocarinas, penny whistles, sassotos, and recorders can all go from that to this. Now, when you get to the instruments such as the flutophones, the tonettes, the song flutes, some of the more primitive instruments, they only get one. Some of the pan flutes as well only get 1 octave from here to here. Now that would be, the 1 octave is going to be from here to here. That's 1 octave. I can take a flutophone and I can make it play maybe 1 note beyond that, but that's about all. It only has about a 1 octave range. The tonettes only has about a 1 octave range. Sometimes I can squeak in another note. Flutophones, song flutes, tonettes, instruments like that have a 1 octave range. Now it looks like they can't play many notes if you look at the bottom ranges, but you've got to remember, these are repeated. C to C, then C to C, then C to C, then C to C. Those are 4 octaves of Cs. So it keeps repeating itself over and over again. So you may be playing 1 octave, but there are octaves exactly like it, except for the fact that they're higher or they're lower, but they're basically the same notes, higher or lower. So if I were to take from a G to a G, let's say I'm doing G. G is right here. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. All right, that's 1 octave from G to G. But then there's another octave from G to G here, and another octave from G to G here. And so therefore they repeat themselves all the time. And you may be playing at a lower range or a higher range, but you're getting the same notes, just higher or lower. Those are what the octaves are. So the instruments such as tonettes, flutophones, song flutes, and some pan flutes will have just that 1 octave range from here to here, although sometimes they can squeak out another note. I usually can. Or you can get the melodicas, ocarinas, penny whistles, sassotos, and recorders, and the regular flutes going all the way up to this 2-octave range. Now, the regular flutes that you see played, not the melody flutes, but the regular flutes like the Artleys and the Armstrongs, the regular flute can go all the way up here. I mean, they have an amazing range. Here's 1 octave, here's a 2nd octave, here's the 3rd octave. That's about as high as you can get. And the flutes can play that. In fact, they play high notes rather easily. Now, there is 1 more octave above that, and I haven't written it in, but there is 1 more octave above that. You don't write for it because it is so high you wouldn't be able to read it, because if you have 5 ledger lines just to read the C above high C, which is 1 octave above this, supposing you want to play something an octave above this, it is playable to a piano. A piano will go that far up, but the flutes can't do it, and most of the woodwinds can't do it. It's just the piano that can do it. It is so hard to write for because you have to add so many more ledger lines that they put in an 8 VA. I have it written right here, an 8 VA. That means play these notes up here that I haven't written in an octave higher than they're written. So you would play these notes an octave higher to get that 8 VA range that you can't write for because you can't read it if you do. You can only read so many lines at a time. I could, and I showed it, I think 2 or 3 sessions ago. You could take these lines, these ledger lines, and draw them all across and make just a larger staff, because that's basically what they are. They're high staff lines, but no one draws them all the way across. You draw them as a shortened lines, and they're called ledger lines. And if you did, and I did bring in a drawing where you'd have like a massive 30-line staff, which you can't read, it's just too difficult to read. And so they use an 8 VA, and that means play that range here, just a higher octave than what it's written, and then you get the 8 VA range, and the piano's can do it. A piano can do it, an organ can do it, but you can't get the woodwinds doing it. It's too high for them. Most woodwinds can play down here. Now, the saxophone can play a low B flat, which is in this range right here, and the clarinets can go even lower, like about this range here. But most of the woodwind instruments do not get below this low C. That's as far as they go. Even the flutes cannot do anything lower than that, but they can do a lot higher than that. So it's just an amazing thing. And why would I show you that? I think if you're going to play in orchestras, school bands, church orchestras, praise teams, and all of that, it's interesting for you to know what range you're in. Depending upon what instrument you play, what ranges are you in? Are you in an instrument that can go lower than what's normal for woodwinds, or do you have to go higher? And what range are you in? So most of your instruments, if you're playing woodwinds, are going to be in this range. This is all a bass clef. You could get the French horns getting lower, you can get the trombones getting lower, you can do all of that with bass clef instruments, but woodwind instruments, for the most part, except for one, plays all in the treble clef. I do have a scale, a fingering chart for a bass recorder. Now, my bass recorder is about 3 feet long. I mean, it's quite large. They also have the straight bass recorders that are even larger than that you play standing up. And most of those will go down lower, but for the most part, the bass recorder, I have a fingering chart that shows both treble scales and bass scales for it. And so it can do lower because it's so large. Remember, the longer the tube, the lower the notes. But most of the woodwinds play from here to here, and the flutes on up to here, and the piano goes an octave higher. Those are the ranges that you're in. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you, down here, let me repeat this down here. C to C, that's that 1 octave range. C to C, that's that 2 octave range that recorders can do, sasutos can do, penny whistles can do, some pan flutes can do. I mean, quite a few instruments can do it. And then there's that other octave right here, which the flutes can do, but they can't go higher than that, and this would be the 8V8 range where only the piano can do. And so when you get up here, if you needed to play anything that was higher, if you're playing piano, there would be an 8V8, which means play these notes here in this range an octave higher than they're written. So that gets you practically to the full keyboard. I have, this is practically all 88 keys. I'm shy 2 keys because I just didn't have the room to put them in. But they would be down at the other end, and we wouldn't be bothering with them as a woodwind player because you'd be playing on the high end. So here is 1 octave, and all of the tonettes, flutophones, song flutes, and some pan flutes right here. And here is that 2nd octave range, and you would be able to play that if you're playing melodicas, ocarinas, penny whistles, sasutos, and recorders. And if you're a flute player, you could go up to this right here. You couldn't go any higher than that. And then 8VA range is going to be this right here, which only the pianos and the organs can get because it's so high that the other woodwinds can't get them. And this is usually the lowest. Saxophone can get to that B flat. Clarinets can get down in this range, but that's unusual. Most instruments stop at that low C, which happens to be the middle C on a piano, but a low C to the woodwinds and the brass because most of them can't get any lower than that, so therefore that's considered to be the low C. Now, what the other thing I want to show you, when I show you, I want to make note of this before I forget it. When I show you a keyboard, I usually take this range to this range and just show you this section. And I'll call that the low C, which is equivalent to the middle C. The middle C is right here. If you get the full range of keys, this is the middle C, but this is the low C. Now, the thing is, most of the time, I'm not going to add that range because we're not going to be using it because we're woodwind players, and woodwind players don't get that low. And we're not going to do it because the flutes can get higher, but the other woodwind melody flutes can't get higher. So I usually take the 2 octaves and show what I can on the 2 octaves without adding any notes. But if I ever do that, you know that there are notes below on the bass clef. There are notes above, more notes above on the treble clef, and this range right here is the actual range that most woodwinds and woodwinds that I'm dealing with in this class, what they are playing. So I hope that makes that somewhat clear to you. Now, I just want to go over this. I hope you can see it. I didn't enlarge it very much. Here's a keyboard, and here's the staff, 5-line staff. So what notes go to what? Well, this is the low C, the same as the middle C that I've just described on the other shot, and it's right here. C, D, right here. E, right here. F, right here. G, right here. A, right here. B right here, and here's your mid-range C, and it's right here. That's 1 octave. And then I just go back and add the other notes. D will be here, E, F, G, A, B, and C. That high C has 2 ledger lines. The low C has 1 ledger line. So what I've done is I've taken the keyboard and I've taken the staff and I've shown you where those notes are on the staff and where they are on the keyboard. Just remember that if I'm showing you a keyboard with a 2 octave range, I'm not showing you a full range keyboard like is right underneath here. I'm just showing you part of it. But you would be surprised what you can learn from that. Why would you want to know? I'm not trying to make you into piano players. I mean, I did study piano for a certain number of years before I took the woodwinds, but I was always interested in the woodwinds. My parents felt that, learning some piano would be a good basis for learning any other instrument, and it really is. But there are a lot of people that don't want to learn piano. They want to learn the instruments that they want to play, but they don't want to have 2 or 3 years of training in an instrument that they don't want to play. And I would agree with them. If you are a child, or if you have a child that wants to play saxophone or clarinet or flute, let him play the saxophone, clarinet, or flute. I think it's up to the teacher to show them about the piano and what it can do and what it does, so you can understand the relationship of notes to each other and where the sharps and the flats come from. I think you need to know that as a musician, even if you're not a piano player. But it doesn't mean that you have to learn to play piano in order to learn it. For teachers like myself, I bring keyboards wherever I go when I'm teaching, or I bring charts about keyboards when I'm teaching, just to show the students certain things about the piano, but not that I'm teaching them how to play piano. I'm not. I want to have them understand enough about a keyboard, because it will explain, if you understand it, the ranges of the instruments, where the sharps and flats come from, how you can check what sharps and what flats are in your music, and understand the range of the notes that you are playing with whatever instrument that you are playing. It's not the same as playing piano, but it's understanding enough about a piano so you can understand better where music comes from and where the notes relate to each other. And I think that's very important. Now, I never had that when I was growing up, except when I was actually taking piano lessons, and I did that for 3 years. And then I gave it up because I really wanted to play woodwinds. But no woodwind teacher ever taught me this stuff, and they should have. Because how many people are going to take 3 or 4 years of piano before they start on the instrument that they really want to play? I say not many. It would mean kind of a waste of money if you really don't want to play piano, to be forced to learn it in order to play something else that you do want to play. That's kind of a waste of money, and it's a waste of resources, and it's a waste of time. The problem is if you force a child to play an instrument that they don't want to play, but they're not interested in that instrument, and you don't let them play the instrument that they do want to play, they're going to lose interest and just stop. And that's kind of a shame, because they may be very brilliant in an instrument that they really do want to play. But if you have a teacher that'll show you some basics without teaching you how to play piano, but show you some basics of notes and where they come from and how they work with each other and what chords really are. A chord is 3 notes played together, and what's the difference between sharps and flats, and you get the basics like that, you can play any instrument and you can adapt that knowledge to whatever you're playing. So I just want to make that out so you can see, here's the staff, here are the notes on the staff, here's the keyboard, and this is how they line up. And so when I'm teaching students, although I pretty much retired, I'm in my 80s now, I used to make booklets of these things so they could actually see them. And then I'd bring keyboards in, and they could actually see what was going on. And most of the places where I taught, some in music schools, they had pianos around anyway, so I didn't even have to bring in charts. But it's important for you to have an understanding. If you are a musician, if you want to be a musician, it's important that you have understanding of those things, even though you're not playing those things. You're not playing the piano. So I just wanted to show those to you so you get some kind of interest in it. Now, we have a little time left. We don't have a lot of time left. So maybe I was going to place, I don't have my music stand here anyway. I don't know where that one went. Let me just tell you about dotted quarters and eighth notes. You will a lot of times have dotted quarters and eighth notes. And how do you get it? A dotted quarter and an eighth is going to actually end up by being 2 beats. And so I see my music stand is crawling in. And nice how it can work like that. Thank you, Rick. I'm going to leave this up, and I'm going to play one. I make 2 copies of everything because I have to see it. Let me see. I'm going to play this. We have enough time for me to go over this somewhat. This is what I'm playing, but I'm playing it on another sheet of paper. And it has, if you look at your signature here, this is the key of G. It has 1 sharp. And the time signature is 3/4, so it's like waltz tempo. So let me play that, and then I'm going to explain to you how you get a dotted quarter and followed by an eighth, because I want to get into that. We have time to describe that before this session closes. So just listen to this, and I'll play it for you. Well, let me put, this is what I played. It's the same as this, but I have on here kind of a notation. A quarter note gets 1 beat in 3/4 time. That 4 stands for a quarter. Just like you took a pizza and you cut it 2 ways and you get 4 pieces out of it, you would get a quarter piece of pizza. So that 4 stands for 1 beat. So here's 1 beat, and this is 1.5 beat. A quarter gets 1 beat, but if you put a dot beside it, it's worth 1/2 of what the original note is. So this note, which is down here, which is a dotted quarter, really means 1.5. So it's actually 1 beat plus half of its worth, which is an eighth. A quarter is really 2/8 together. If you were to take a quarter and you were to split it, you would have 2/8. So you play 1/8, and then what you have left is another eighth. That other eighth is right here. 1, 2, 3, and. You would count it like that. 1, 2, 3, and. You say 2, 3 for this, because what you're doing is you're adding an eighth note to it, so it's a little longer than a quarter. So you can count it 2, 3, and then that and is the rest of the eighth note that's not attached. And that's how you get your dotted, a dotted quarter and an eighth. And I have them all the way through. I think when I come back for the next session, I'll go into the song again because we're about out of time. But, you know, just like I've explained before, that a dotted eighth and 16th is 1 beat when you put them together. Well, a dotted quarter and an eighth is 2 beats when you put them together. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. That's 3 beats because it's a whole note and it has whatever the time signature says it has, and that's 3 beats to the measure. So this whole note here is worth 3 beats. And the same thing is repeated. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. The rest of these, that dotted half is actually 3 beats, just like the whole note is for 3 beats, because that's a half note, and the dot adds 1/2 of the value of that note, which is 1 beat, because the half note is 2 beats, so you're adding another beat to it, and that turns out to be 3 beats. That turns out to be 3 beats. It really doesn't matter how I write it. If I want a note to last for the entire 3 beats, because since it's a waltz and you keep 3 beats to a measure, I can do it either way. It's just as legitimate. As a matter of fact, I could write 3 quarter notes and put a hold over them all. That would still be 3 beats, and I could do it that way as well. Well, we are running out of time, but I'm going to go over this again. So we'll be doing some timing, and I've written a group of songs basically to show you timing, and we'll be doing that next time. So we'll close it here. Please join me next time.